County. We'll be placing an ad in the Arizona Daily Star and one in the, I believe, the Green Valley
News.
Green Valley News Sun. The Sun.
Just the Green Valley News.
Just the Green. Okay. So anyway, that is our plan. We have to do that before the end of the calendar year, and I believe Ms. Storm has some dates that we're talking about. We'll get back to that in a minute, but what we did want to do is talk about the contents of the report. As you all know, it's been continuing through COVID, and it has created some challenges for us. It's also created some interesting, or it has also had some unexpected impacts in terms of increased revenue, coupled with some increasing costs that we're going to have to deal with in future years. But we did want to review the year in total. We have completed our single audit that was done by Heinfeld Nietzsche. We received a copy of it here a week or two ago. Mr. Samuelson is here to address any comments that you might want to take up with him. In a nutshell, on the audit, what it shows is that we had better than anticipated revenues and lower than anticipated expenses. It's not that things are cheaper on the expense side. It is that projects have been experiencing delays, and as a result, the delivery of projects hasn't occurred at the pace that we had anticipated. For some projects that have not yet started that we anticipated that would be underway this year. And so, that's the principal reason for the difference in the revenue and costs. We try on an annual basis to try to make them match up, and try as we might, project delays do regularly result in us having a surplus moving forward. Our surplus last year was in the, I think it was $111 million last year. It has grown to something, I think it's $157.4 million. Part of that is due to the fact that there's been these delays. Part of it has been this unexpected revenue. When we went into fiscal year 21, we have a duty to put together a budget at prior to the end of the prior fiscal year. For the forthcoming fiscal year, we did that and presented that to the RTA board in May of 2020 to kind of remind everybody we had in May of 2020 we were still coming out of stay-at-home orders. We were hearing a lot of very gloomy forecasts, and we had not really seen the effects of stimulus on the economy yet. So at that point in time, things were looking very bleak. We conservatively budgeted, and we had a revenue estimate that we had to put in our budget of a little over $77 million. In fact, what we collected was over $101 million. So that gives you an idea of the swing that we saw there, almost a 33% increase in our base budget for that. So that informs part of this increase in surplus. Some other things of note: transit operations. Ordinarily, we see that in the range of about $26 million a year. This year, it was about $20 million. It was in part due to the fact that there was a decline in demand on some of the air transit services. Many of those folks were, as you're looking at a reduced amount of circulation within the community of people who would be demanding those services. I know a lot of medical care was delayed due to the pandemic. So a lot of those needed medical trips weren't taken, or telemed was substituted. So that had an impact. The city of Tucson received, as did the RTA. RTA got a very small amount of CARES money, but the city of Tucson received a fair amount of CARES money, and as a result of that, they opted to not collect transit fares. and we were reimbursed for that offset. So that occurred during the fiscal year. And finally, I'd mentioned that because of this reduction in demand, we did see a reduction in service being offered, particularly on express routes. A lot of employees who might have gone downtown or to the university for work, many of them were more apt to work from home, and as such, the express trips were reduced. Wasn't initially reduced because of a decline in demand. It was really reduced because the city needed to redeploy drivers. We are in a situation where we continue to have a challenge recruiting enough professional drivers. It's a very competitive market out there for those employees. To recall, the transportation and warehousing sector of our economy, as Mr. Hammond related in his reports recently, that's the one part of our economy that has really been growing. That has created a real demand for those drivers, and it's hard to recruit them there. I know SunTran and Sunlink and Sun Shuttle services are all actively trying to recruit drivers and maintenance employees, and it is a challenge. We are struggling with that. So with that struggle also reduces service, which reduces expenditures. So that's in part what's going on the transit side of the equation. So our administration expenses remain relatively low. We had budgeted a little more for this because we thought there'd be more expenses associated with the RTA Next process. Because of the pandemic, that was curtailed somewhat. So those expenditures didn't occur. And the other big item in the financial picture is the continuing servicing of RTA debt. We did sell bonds. We sold bonds in 2011. 2014, and then we refinanced some bonds in 2017. So we have 3 issues. The 2011 issue, with the end of the fiscal year, was closed out. So we, going into fiscal 22, we have no further liability on the, and correct me if I'm wrong on that, Mr. Samuelson, but we have no further responsibility or liability associated with the 2011 series bonds. Those have been retired. We still are carrying about 29.75 million, $74 million dollars a year in debt service. That's principal interest, and that's a level payment series. So we'll be, it'll vacillate a little bit, a couple of $1,000s, but from this point forward, that's what we'll see being paid out every year until the end of the RTA. So that, in a nutshell, is our financial picture. With that, I'd ask Mr. Samuelson to add any other comments, things that I missed. Although one thing I would, as we look to the future and what we might anticipate receiving, one thing I would temper or kind of let everybody know, remind them, is that we saw a real sea change in our economy with the 2008 recession. Looking back, as to why our revenues have been underperforming what the original plan was. In addition to changes in the way we spend our money, we had forecast a population in 2025. This goes to a 2004 plan. We were expecting 1.4 million people in the Tucson metro area in 2025. We are at this point well under 1.1 million, and that's probably where we'll end up with. So that's 300,000 people that did not move to Tucson, that did not buy houses, that did not pay taxes in Tucson and Cook County. So that has a big bearing on why we are not realizing the amount of revenue that we get into. So on that, I'll
Just a couple of quick notes on the revenue, why we beat our plan by so much. One is plan was to be conservative because of COVID. We didn't know what to expect, so we kind of backed off the revenue projection. The other thing is we had 2 events in Arizona. Those both contribute really to our revenue picture that we would hope more and buy more.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I would say that interestingly, we've noted that there's more sales tax collected, and this is at the half-cent rate. There's a surcharge, an excise tax that we don't see. We just get the half-cent sales tax that's in the plan on marijuana, both recreational and medical marijuana. There's more money spent on marijuana than amusement, so more than at the movie theater. So just to put that into kind of perspective.
And e-commerce is really, it's really a tricky number. Say, Amazon had a special deal with the state of Arizona, so that one's sort of aside from everything else. The other e-commerce companies target. So their numbers, their e-commerce numbers are represented in retail sales, the physical presence here. The e-commerce number doesn't really include a Target or an Amazon, but it includes everybody else. And from the Wayfair versus North Dakota ruling that allowed us to collect sales tax on where the product is delivered rather than where it's sold from. Companies that are e-commerce companies, once they hit $100,000 revenue, they have to register with the state. So what we're seeing, that number will continue to rise because we've seen more and more companies that are signing on or out of state that are selling in the state as they hit that $100,000. The e-commerce number is hard to understand because it doesn't include all e-commerce, because some of that's reported through retail sales.
Right. If you had a bricks and mortar presence at the beginning, it's up to you to how you report it, and that's gonna evolve over time. Okay. Before we move on, any questions on the RTA financial situation? Any of the audit questions?
Yeah, I do have one.
I'd be happy to volunteer Rob to answer.
I just had one, I guess, clarification with the marijuana tax and the e-commerce. What is that added on maybe on a monthly basis? Is there an average or average monthly basis what that is added to the revenues for RTA?
Now, I would tell you that the percentage is growing. When we first started collecting now retail is our largest set. That's the largest collection that we get of the $100+ million per year. That probably represents something on the 55 to 60% of that number. So there's a lot of other elements, utilities, vacations, bar and restaurant, all of these construction in the 55-60% range. Of that, e-commerce started when we first started collecting. It was representing about 6% of the total retail picture. It's now up pushing 9 and 10%. And we saw a big change once the stay-at-home orders hit. We went immediately from 6% to 8 to 9%. Pretty consistently on that.
To give you a comparison, nationally, online sales are about 12% of retail sales, probably higher this year. I haven't seen those numbers yet. So if we're getting 8 or 9%, we're below the 12%. Then you have to think about the Amazon and Targets and how they're reporting. So we're probably kind of it's been growing every month because it's pretty new and people are getting registered. So we're probably starting to get to that where it's leveling out and be more consistent.
We'll see where that goes. And we'll see what happens over time with the traditional bricks and mortar retail versus online sales. I think that will continue to evolve over time. Probably not the big rate of change that we saw associated with the pandemic, but I think people will change their purchasing habits over time. And we'll see that reflected in our sources of sales.
I can give you those exact numbers. I just have them upstairs.
No, I'm just curious. The percentage helps, and that's what I was just wondering. You know, I mean, because those are two additional, revenue streams that we did not anticipate. When the plan originally came together, and I mean, I guess that helps, right, for the shortfall that we had from 2008.
There's some other changes in the sales set that have happened in sales tax that changed the way general contracting is done. So those numbers have moved around a little bit. There's a couple categories that we used to collect on that we don't collect on anymore. Very minor, publishing and anyway. So it's a moving target.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, there's not stasis here. So.
And just by way of kind of to give you kind of an order of magnitude, I did a quick calculation. First month that we saw adult use recreational marijuana reported, we saw, and I want to say it was approaching that $50,000 worth of collections to us, which would have corresponded to, I believe, about $20 million worth of sales within the community.
That's scary, isn't it?
It's scary. That's scary.
Yeah, it was.
We were
So
shocked.
it caught our attention.
Yeah.
So and that would be just a month, and the medical marijuana sales are reported separately, and they're actually consistently higher than the recreational sales, or have been. So.
Questions?
So just as a reference, what makes up on page 11 of the audit, what makes up the unavailable resources? Change. Is that the kind of 2/3 of the page?
Question. I don't know. I'll have to look that up.
Madam Chair, if there are no further questions, we can continue on with this if under the other areas.
Yes.
One of the things that I think we probably most are identified with as our major projects. And there were two completions of two major roadway element or project element or sub-elements that also completed projects. So the second phase of the Valencia Road, Ajo Way to Ajo Highway to Wade Road project was completed. That was early. Both of these completions were early in fiscal year 21. What that did though was it completed that RTA number 21 project. So that second phase that basically was west of the casino completed the entirety of that project. And with that, Valencia is one of our key corridors in the region, particularly for commerce and freight. And what that means now is we've got a consistent, modern roadway now, multi-lane facility, 4 to 6 lanes that extends from Ryan Airfield west of the Tucson Mountains over or through the Tucson Mountains across Interstate 19 and Interstate 10, extending to about 0.8 of a mile east of Kolb Road. So we do have one more phase within the RTA of the Valencia Road project, at which point in time we'll take it all the way to Houghton Road. That's a pretty significant corridor for us for both freight and for regional mobility. The other multi-phase project that completed in 2021 was the La Cholla Boulevard project from Overton to Tangerine Road. That was a phase of RTA 4, which actually took it down all the way to McGee. The McGee to Tangerine or the McGee to Overton phase was built by Pima County, and the Overton to Tangerine phase was administered by the town of Ola Valley. They did get some additional funding and support from Pima County because part of that is in unincorporated Pima County, but they were the lead agency on the second phase. And that now wraps up the work that the RTA had anticipated on the La Cholla corridor. There were two projects on the La Cholla corridor, both this project, RTA number 4, and I believe RTA number 10 was the piece between Ruthroff and River Road. So that now completes the RTA's corridor improvements on that major north-south corridor. So we have an east-west corridor that's seen substantial improvement, and we've closed out the improvements on that north-south corridor. We did not see any new major RTA projects start in fiscal year 21. However, we did have 3 projects that started just prior to the fiscal year and that have continued through the fiscal year, and will at least one of them is now complete, and another one we hope to see completed this fiscal year. Those are first the Ruthroff Road at I-10 and Union Pacific Railroad overpass. That was a project that was done with the Arizona Department of Transportation. They were the lead agency on that. Our interest in this was in the railroad overpass. Their interest was mainline I-10 work, and this was a fairly significant project in that it took an existing at-grade rail crossing, clearly a safety hazard. We've had accidents there in the past. That now has flipped the intersect or the interchange operation. So instead of having Ruthroff Road cross the railroad at grade and then go under the interstate, it's now reversed so that it goes over the interstate and over the railroad tracks and lands on the other side. So that's a significant safety improvement. It's consistent with things that we're doing up and down the I-10 corridor. We now have Miracle Mile, Prince, Ruthroff, and Orange Grove and Ina interchanges and Twin Peaks interchanges are now grade separated with the railroad. We have Cortero is not being addressed with the RTA plan. I know it's a subject of conversation in terms of RTA Next, but that currently is not one that we've slated for reconstruction. That'd be a conversation. We also have the Sunset Road project where we're looking at doing a grade separation there. That's not a current, it's an interchange, but the roadway does not extend to the east. And that will be something that we hope to see go to construction next calendar year. So that's something that's in the works. But anyway, I'm sorry, I digress. I went off my script there, sorry about that. But so RTA number 9, the Ruthroff Road and Union Pacific Railroad overpass is now substantially complete and will be reported in next fiscal year or the next RTA report as being a completed project. The Downtown Links project continues on. That will be a grade separation with the railroad as well. So again, another safety improvement that will ultimately grade separate St. Mary's 6th Street. So that will we grade separate that at grade crossing, and we'll close some other existing at grade crossings to automobile traffic. There still will be some pedestrian and bicycle crossings that will be at grade there, but it will take the automobiles out of the equation on the crossings downtown area. That project will continue on. It will not complete in this fiscal year, current fiscal year we're in now. It will still go on beyond that, and that's something that we're working with the city of Tucson on some funding issues with. And the final project I wanted to point out that's been under construction throughout the course of fiscal 21 is the Broadway Boulevard Euclid Avenue to Country Club Road project, which it's had some challenges due to some unforeseen utility conflicts, as well as some, frankly, the pandemic has affected both materials and labor negatively on that particular project. So that's something that we will complete this fiscal year, and you'll hear a report on that in next year's annual report. Continuing on, projects that we expect to get going. We do expect in fiscal year 22, the one that we're in currently, we do expect to see 22nd Street commence construction. I know that's got a CMAR, and I know that the CMAR team is working to get that underway. We know they're working on some things that will probably mean they'll be starting later in the fiscal year, not later in fiscal year 22. We know that Silver Bell Road, RTA 5, will be in for the second phase of that. That's expected to go to construction next summer. So we'll probably seeing a bid in the late spring. It's kind of on the line in terms of whether it starts in this fiscal year, but we believe that's a possibility. We also believe that it's a possibility that RTA 18, the Grant Road project, Grant Road goes from Swan to Oracle. This would be phases 3 and 4, which would extend from basically Venice Avenue, I believe it is. It's just to the west of Swan, where it transitions from, where the current roadway to the east transitions down to 4 lanes from 6 lanes. At that point in time, we'll pick it up. There won't be a significant amount of work in the Swan intersection. It'll all be to the west of it, but it will go through the Columbus, Alvernon and Dodge intersection. So those 3 intersections will be involved. I believe that there will be an indirect left turn at Alvernon. So I know that's a source of constriction and a real pain point for people. It's kind of joking with somebody the other day. I used to, they said, "Wow, this congestion is horrific at Alvernon," and it is. And I related to them that when I was in high school, I used to ride the Grant Road bus, and if I couldn't get on at Dodge, I could outrun it to Alvernon and get on there. So that congestion has been there for a long time. This will be a project that will address that. So at any rate, that's a major project that we see going forward. And then later in 2022, not sure whether it'll make fiscal year 2022 or whether it'll be after the end of or late summer, early fall. We do expect that the final phase of RTA 25. That's that project I mentioned to you about completing the Valencia Road corridor improvements. That will take Valencia Road from basically about a mile to the 4,000 feet west or east of Kolb is where the current road ends. would pick up at that point and carry it on through the Houghton Road intersection. So that project will likely bid next summer. So those are the projects that are on tap in terms of getting close to construction. We do have a number of other projects that are being worked on for design, including the next phase of Houghton Road, and we also are looking at additional phases on Grant that's in design right now, the final phase of Grant, and there are some other projects that are in the works. So certainly, we're having a conversation with the city right now about what First Avenue will look like. So that's all being. So that, in a nutshell, is where we stand with major projects. There has been continuing work on some smaller projects, categoricals. They have not been our focus recently, in part because very early in the RTA, when we were going into the Great Recession and we needed to keep people busy and take advantage of the favorable construction timing. And while we were waiting for the major projects to go through design and planning and all of the necessary steps to bring them to construction, we invested in categoricals. And we have hit the major milestones, or are very close to hitting the major milestones. So for instance, we are reporting that to date on the intersection improvements, we've completed 194 of the 200 that were promised. We will exceed that number, in part because of the intersections we're improving with the RTA roadway. Pedestrian crossings, we're at 76 of 80 promised. That will go well over, particularly as we look at the hawk crossings that will be being put in with the indirect lefts on Grant Road. There'll be a substantial number of improvements there. Sidewalk, we're looking at 179 of 250 miles promised are now complete, and we'll be building sidewalks with these real good projects. Bike lanes, we're at 366 of 550. So, if there's any area that we're a little weak on, it's the bike facilities, and we've been talking to our jurisdictional partners. If there are projects that that have funding in them that they'd like to redeploy to bike lane projects, we are open to that. I know we did enter into an agreement with the town of Laurel Valley recently to do some improvements along Lafayette Drive where there isn't a sidewalk of note, being basically Vermont pocket. So something that we're working on. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the program and the projects that we do.
I can explain the 516,000. It's a accounting adjustment between the modified accrual method of accounting and cash. So it's receivables that can't be applied to current year expenditures.
Then, Madam Chair, these are what we're going to be reporting on the documents that we're going out. We're in the process of editing the report, the multi-page report that will be posted on the website after the first of the year. Ms. Storm, do you want to speak to the advertising and the ad layout here?
Yeah, we have 2 ads that will go into the Arizona Daily Star and Green Valley News, since we're required to publish in 2 daily newspapers before the end of the year. So you have copies of those, and so take a look at those. And if you have any questions, let me know. Right now, they're scheduled to be published on December 26th, Sunday, in both publications. And it'll also be posted on our website. And then we have a little bit of an expanded annual report that we'll publish, that usually is published in January, and that includes more photographs and a little bit more of what Jim was just talking about with the project highlights. So so that meets the requirement that the statute and the board has put in place in terms of having these published before the end of the year. And That's it.
Okay, well, Madam Chair, that is the essence of what we wanted to talk about today. So at this point, we have no other items on the agenda, so it would be appropriate to, unless you want to revisit anything, last call for comments, I guess that would be appropriate to post.
Turn the meeting in. Thank you.
All right, thank you all.